Ready? We'll go ahead and call Morgan County Fiscal Court to order January 3rd, 2017, first meeting of the year. Under correspondence, putting on the mitts the New Orleans style. The Exceptional Center has got an event going on at the Kentucky Dam Village, February 4th this year at 5:30 p.m. You're invited to help raise funds for the Morris County Exceptional Center, so put that on your calendar, and it's at the Kentucky Dam Village. And that's sponsored by the Benton Women's Club. If you need more information on it, contact Nancy Sherman, 504-228-6125. Correspondence, MediaCom. I'll just read this to you. This is December 1st, local broadcast and regional sports surcharge and HSD changes. The purpose of the letter is to inform you that on or about today, January 3rd, I'm assuming that's 2017, MediaCom will be implementing the following rate adjustments. Local broadcast station surcharge, $1.41 is the current rate. New rate, $8.63. Regional sports surcharge, current rate's 28 cents. New rate is $2.99. And the family TV, current rate's $2. New rate's $71.95. So that takes effect as of today.
I think that first line is the rate change.
Which one? Rate change.
Yeah, it makes it look like there's a large jump, but it's, that first
Yep.
one is the change.
I'm glad you caught that. Yep, that's the rate change, not the current rate. Sorry. That is a huge, that's. Under old business, approve the minutes for December 20th.
Motion to approve the minutes, Judge.
Second.
Those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Judge, I have
Yeah.
a question, I guess maybe for Emily, on the, it's under the letter E, where funds were at the last meeting, there was an error in the deposit, and those funds went in the payroll fund.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an attempt to clear that mistake up, that error up.
Yes.
It went in it should have gone in the general fund.
Right.
What was the source of that $103,000?
My computer's pulling up. I'll have to look
Okay.
at that and let you know.
We'll hope it's faster than.
It's not being fast. That's why I was late, because I finally just shut it and came on. I'm at 30% complete, so y'all should just move on.
I just suggested that.
It's probably faster for me to just go downstairs and grab that. Deposit.
Either way.
Okay.
Whichever one. We'll wait before we get into it.
Okay.
We can probably move on to the next item, because I don't think this is going to be an issue. We'll move on while she's getting that. Hill Creek subdivision roads. We had the public hearing. If I remember correctly, there were no one that opposed or represented, and the road review was conducted. Everything seems to be within the requirements for the petition.
Yes, your petition was, it was adequate, or more than adequate, and your road report, which is in the record. Didn't have any criticisms of the road or taking it in, and you didn't hear anything negative in the hearing itself. So
Okay.
basically, your record is all in favor.
What, did you ever find out the answer to the question about?
Yes.
Could we,
Yes, there is not a specific requirement to not vote on that
there is
day,
no
but
waiting period?
They have recommended for years that we do it that way, and it saves a publishing. If you have the hearing, then at an open meeting, and then come back and vote at another meeting, Mr. Ornstein says it basically saves a publishing. So, you can do it either
Just,
way,
I knew that in the past, thought we were following the law, and the only time in the past that, I'm talking about the city government, that we had a public hearing if no one was present to speak for or against, and that met all the specifications, we went ahead for the sake of time, we went ahead and made that approval and so forth, and the only time that we varied from that, so I knew that you could do that, there was no waiting period by law, and the only time that we ever did to make that decision at the next meeting was when people were there to speak in opposition or for, and, to go home and digest that information that we'd heard in that public hearing and not act on it, right then and sleep on it, so.
I knew there wasn't a specific requirement that that forced you to do it. I went to him for the reason it was started, and that was
Right.
through CACO.
All right. I guess make a motion, need a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead until she gets back. We'll go on to new business. The South Marshall Fire Department, the board appointment. I'm going to read, June Hudson had to step down. I'll read her letter. It's dated December 7th. Dear Judge Neal, due to an upcoming move out of state, I regret to inform the court that I'll be resigning my position with the South Marshall Fire Department Board effective December 31st, 2016. It has been a pleasure serving on this board, and I wish them continued success. Sincerely, June Hudson. There is a name. This is from recommendation from the South Marshall Fire Department. Martha, they recommend Martha Hopper. Does anybody know Martha?
Absolutely. She'll make a good member.
Move that we accept the recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Judge, while I'm thinking of it, Bob Johnson, he is over the cemetery board. He asked me Saturday morning if y'all would be, or we would be hunting a replacement for him. He can't get off, he can't do it anymore, he said.
Okay.
Health reasons.
I tell you what, do we know of anybody that has expressed interest? I know sometimes people will
I
reach
asked
out.
him if he'd recommend anybody, and he didn't know of
You
any.
didn't know anybody? Okay.
I talked to Tick.
Tech,
I think he's been involved with that. He might know someone.
okay. And if there's listeners out there, if they're interested, they can contact my office. That's the cemetery.
Johnson's been the only chairman of that board since it was created.
Yeah.
And Ms. Hopper was on the fire department before the new district was created for years and years.
Is that right?
I know that she's on
Okay. 19,000 was from the clerk's office for motor vehicle tax, and 83,000 was from AOC and Kentucky for court rental.
What was the last one?
Court rental from AOC.
No, I just wondered what the source of the income was, and went to payroll instead of general fund, and that answers my question. Gotcha.
Yeah. And Dave does too.
Oh, yeah. Under new business, we'll move on, sheriff's budget and cumulative quarterly report and annual settlement for calendar year 2017. I've got the old, I think we've got on there too, the deputy hire. I think everybody's got some documents there in front of them. I know we had sent out a bunch of, I know the sheriff and Emily have met several times. You should have an updated spreadsheet.
That we got just a while ago,
Yeah,
it differs from this one in our packet.
yes,
Slightly.
slightly.
It just has,
Yeah.
it doesn't differ, it just has additional information.
Is that what you got one? If, I'll try to, well, you could probably explain this better than I could, so go ahead.
Okay, the additional information that you have on this spreadsheet versus the prior one is I was trying to get a comparison for you all from the 2016 deputy hire maximum to the 2017 deputy hire maximum. If everything were to stay the same in 2017 as it were in 16, with the exception of the changes that are already made, such as the change in the clef pay, going for up to $4,000 a year, where we only had that in half of the year for 2016, it would be for the full year in 2017. Also, I've estimated $4,500. I didn't have time to go and decide, figure out exactly what that amount would be, but that is for the amount, the cost of living difference that was only for the latter 6 months of 2016. That would be for the full year of 2017. And then the sheriff has longevity increases and promotions for 2017 that would be needed to be added to the 2016 numbers. When you do that, when I add that together, it gives me about a $7,800 difference from what I can come up with. Some of that very well may be in that cost of living. That $4,500 is that's a guess. It may be $7,500. I have to go back and look at it, and I didn't really have time to get to it. But ultimately, the numbers on your left, with the base pay, with all of the communications, detective, clef pay, all of that, plus the number of overtime hours that between the court and the sheriff decides on, the numbers to your left are all accurate numbers. And the sheriff and I are within a few hundreds of dollars of having this exact same number. And out of over $1.3 million, I think under $600 is pretty good.
So what we need to do for his budget, or his, what he's getting ready to submit to DLG, we have to have the OT identified. I think this year, 2016, it was at $2,268 for overtime, and what is being requested is $4,000. And so it's broken out. You can see on the left where it's got 2,500 hours, 3,000, 3,500, 4,000 hours. As far as the justification for the 4,000, I think the sheriff's got some documents or something to share with us.
Yeah, that should have been in what,
The overtime breakdown was in that
Yeah.
email.
and that's what I based our numbers off of. That includes not only us, but court security as well, because they do accumulate some. And like I said, the last 3 or 4 years running, 3,800, 3,700, and 4,400, and that's where I was basing it off of. Now, this year was quite low because because of budget issues, we kept a tight rein on it, but there was plenty of times, especially on the midnight shifts, for a couple hours anyway, I left somebody by themselves, which is not a good situation, but in order to make our deputy hire this time, we had to make those sacrifices, and that's not fair to those men that are working, it's not fair to the citizens out there, so that's why that number is as low as it is this year. You know, unexpected things do come up in our business, you know. Our call-outs for our tactical unit are not that many, I think, what, one this year? Or two, something like that. But we do have training that we have to do, 16 hours a month, we have to do. But I do have a reconstructionist. We do not have to depend on state police to do that. I do have a reconstructionist. We utilized him quite a bit last year. We had several fatalities, unfortunately. And just things such as that, community events that our guys go to, you know, not really on a volunteer basis, because I do ask those guys to do some things, and coverage for like Food Fest and prom and graduation, things such as that. But the rest of it is broke out with our hardened overtime, federal overtime, our court coverage, shift coverage. Being as our call volume was extremely high this year, over 50% increase from last year's numbers, we will be going to court quite a bit more because more arrests have been made. And unfortunately, we are subpoenaed to be there at 1 o'clock, and it may be 3:30 before our guys even get to testify. So unfortunately, they've got to sit there that entire time, and I've got to eat that cost. So as you see, there's the numbers for the last few years.
I personally fully understand the overtime at court. You're at the mercy of the courts. I do have one question, is the numbers for the past years with the traffic details, I think in the way traffic, or not traffic details, but like the highway details, how that was conducted compared to this year? Were those numbers extracted from?
Yes.
From those numbers?
Yes, yeah.
What was that total, do you know?
Right off the top of my head, I don't know.
Does David know?
No.
I'm sorry?
No, we didn't break that out because, like I said, we do it totally different this way now. And some of those numbers will account for that. The 4,400, that was whenever we were doing the detail in Lyon County, and we were out there quite a bit on that, whereas these last few we haven't.
And I know we talked, and I think you would agree too, moving forward, when we get into the budget workshops and whatnot, to break these out in a line item so that we can see, because there are some overtime where we're at the mercy of the courts. There's federal programs, the FOT, and the traffic. What did the amount that what do y'all normally get? Do you know what you got for 2016 for both? The grant programs for traffic and FOT?
As far as how much monies, it's usually somewhere right around between 17,000 and 20,000 is what we get for the FOT.
For each one of them?
Yeah, for.
Traffic?
That's total.
So it's total for DUI enforcement and then traffic
that's
enforcement?
all FOT, yeah.
I think it's right at 18,000 for the coming year.
We eat every bit of that up.
Yeah.
We
and
don't
and-
turn any of that back in if we can help it.
Yeah, and so that the commissioners know, it's a good program, but it's also 100%
Yeah.
reimbursed. So those monies that we use.
It goes for overtime as well as some fuel. We can reimburse for that, and sometimes we do get equipment.
Equipment. So about 18 about
I
18,000?
think that's what it is for this year coming up, I think.
There are some other of these items that are reimbursed as well. Isn't Clef reimbursed? Doesn't it come to you from the state? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then,
And Hardin overtime, that is reimbursed as well.
there was another one I've seen. Oh, we get some monies from AOC for court security.
Yes.
It doesn't cover all of them, but it does cover a portion of some of them.
Covers a large majority of it.
Do you have the hours broken down for this year as far as what you put in? This year's hours were 2268.
I just did a total, 4,000 total. I didn't break it down as far as
I think he's,
category. That's
well, I think he's
difficult to do.
asking, how much shift coverage did you cover? Because that wouldn't be in my numbers, because you don't get paid overtime for anything that you covered.
I couldn't tell you right off the top of the head, but I worked several shifts covering this past year. Which,
I think from 2268, I'm just trying to, so everybody understands where the 4,000 that's on there, trying to justify the 4,000. Obviously, that's why we're having this conversation. And we've done a great job. I mean, I think we can do better, but we've done a great job this year as far as with your department. And if we can get you can't nail down court. I mean, court overtime, it is what it is. We can't ask the courts to understand, but it is what it is. But we have gotten better this year. And I think you were under this year.
yeah,
And as far as the overtime for the deputy hire maximum, I mean, we finally, I don't know how many years it's been, but we've gotten under. So we're doing good things. We're moving forward to where we all understand the dollars and the activity in each department, not just your department, because I know we've got issues with 911 and some other departments, but I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands 2268 to 4,000 is roughly what, 50,000? You know, I pose a question.
It's more like 60, from the 2268. From 2,500, it's about 52,000.
You know, should we find for your department, what is a number of overtime hours where you're not going to be put in a compromising situation? You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
Because, I mean, it fluctuates. And instead of just throwing out, not saying that 4,000 was thrown out there, but justifying, you know, those dollars each year the best that we can.
And I've explained to the judge, and I don't know that I explained to Johnny, the part of the reason in the overtime hours shifting down this year was because the sheriff and I didn't work together on numbers last year. So therefore, when I did some of the calculations, I didn't include their holiday pay, where I'm paid for holidays, but I'm not working, so I don't get an additional pay for that. So when he covers that shift, we need to add holiday hours into their total hours. So instead of basing somebody off 2,080 hours, which is what I did, they need to be based off of 2192 for 2016. So you've got an extra 112 hours in 19 different deputies' pay. Well, that equates to almost 2,200 hours overtime, or 2,200 regular hours that ate away at some of those dollars that should have been allocated for overtime, because he and I didn't work together on that. And this year, we have, the straight hours reflects this policy. So I feel much more confident about the numbers this year, because we do have some history to go off of now.
I think that's,
It has been very appreciative of Emily coming down
Yeah.
and helping with that. I mean, it's
Things like that, I
been a
didn't
learning
know, wouldn't
experience for
know.
both of us.
sure. So I guess for the commissioners, the question is, she's broken it out here. We have options. Obviously, the proposed 4,000, then you got 3,500 and 3,000, 2,500. and it's got the dollar amount, how much that cost is. This year, even though the sheriff worked some details, I would say the 2268 would probably be below what you need, but what do we need to identify as far as what he needs? You're looking at, if you start out, and the goal here is to find a mean average to where you're not, the service is still provided, the men are not put in a compromising situation. I don't know if 3,000 would be a starting point, and then, we go into the next year. And I think it's a good idea to separate it out so that
And we
you can come to
discussed that.
us and show us exactly where your overtime is. I know we deal with a bulk number, and it's very hard to
Yeah,
identify.
the sheriff and I discussed that when you get back from your mission trip, that we could go through there and start separating those out to where it's clearer what the issue is. If you anticipate, I'm just ballparking here, but 500 hours for court overtime, and you see after 4 months, you're already at 350, 400, that would be something that you need to bring to the court's attention, let them know that you're nearing that total, and that you might try to consume it somewhere else if you're having a better year, but at the same time, that may not be an ability. You might not be able to do that. So this deputy hire maximum can be amended, and should be amended at least come July to reflect a cost of living increase if the court gives one. So this can be amended. This is not a chiseled in stone number.
In fairness to the sheriff, as far as these overtime hours are concerned, as everyone knows, in this last year in January, the end of December, Marshall County elected to go wet, and of course, that's an unknown for the sheriff, and I know, as we all know, there's positives with alcohol, but there's also negatives associated with alcohol, and I don't see that request as outrageous for the 4,000 hours of overtime, based on the fact that, I was kind of shocked at going from 2268 to 4,000 until I thought through the process that Marshall County is now wet, and some of the negatives that are associated with alcohol unfortunately have to be handled by his department. So I can certainly understand how that number could go up significantly.
If you're talking about alcohol, do we have the numbers for federal overtime? Because federal overtime is 100% reimbursed. That's what we just talked about.
As far as,
DUI enforcement compared to,
our federal overtime hours, and that's, of course, that's everything combined. That's, seatbelt, DUI, that's all of it, highway safety monies. We had 362 hours.
how much of that for DUI?
It's all together, they don't separate it for fire department.
Do y'all manage it as one full amount of money that you get, and you do all the seatbelt and
Yeah, they have
DUI?
different
You don't break it
campaigns
out?
through the highway safety cycle. And we participate in those campaigns when they come up, but it's all one monies. It's not broken out into what's DUI, what's seatbelt. It's denoted when we turn our reports in, but we don't track it as far as my purposes. Now, I can get that from Jason to see what the numbers were.
Sure. Yeah, because that way you can show how much enforcement, if you got fatalities that are indicators of alcohol, then you can increase your alcohol enforcement, and vice versa for traffic.
Jason Ivey's the one that takes care of the highway safety. He's the one that does all that, does all the paperwork for it.
And again, all those monies were spent.
Yeah, I mean, if we had any left over, it wouldn't, it was a few $100s, if that.
Right.
You're not gonna,
Right.
But yeah, we try to eat it all up.
I understand. Do we have the, since we're talking about going wet for the first year, do we have the DUI rates as far as this county compared to last year?
I don't know what last year's numbers were, but I just run them this morning. We had 115 DUI complaints this year.
What about arrests?
I would have to see what the arrest on that is. I'd say it's going to be the same, if not within, I don't know, probably within 10 or so, because, you know, there's times that we call it in as a stop, and it's not really the
Sure.
case as that. But
Sure.
I've been advised as far as caseload is concerned, our alcohol-related cases that are pending in court are up approximately 40% this year.
Is that DUI, is that just
DUI,
traffic or
that's-
domestic?
Anything alcohol-related.
Probably a lot of domestic disturbances.
I was about to say that our biggest jump is our domestics. It's jumped up huge this year.
I guess where I'm going with it at is because you got court overtime, and if it's tied in with DUI enforcement, all that is reimbursed through the grant program, correct?
Court time is not,
Court time's not.
So,
It's not included in that grant.
just enforcement.
so if an officer working the federal overtime makes a DUI arrest, that is, but then when he goes to court, then that's on us. Do we have those numbers?
As far as,
How much it cost us? Or how much it cost out of your budget, your deputy hire?
I mean, our court overtime was
Yes.
129 hours this time.
Do we, out of 129, do we know how much is related to the DUI enforcement?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that we can break that out, just to be honest with you.
The court overtime?
You have to know which case is DUI related or alcohol related. I don't know. We could do it, but that's going to take a lot of work. I mean, it's not that simple.
I mean, I've worked a ton of it. The overtime is, the SRN, the actual court case is identified with that officer. I mean, you should be able to just keep track of it throughout the year.
Just the DUIs, probably not a whole lot of court time, because those are misdemeanors. Unless there's a motion filed by the defense or it's trial,
Right,
then I don't need the officer there in court. I can just call and talk to him.
right.
Sometimes there's going to be a felony attached to it, and we have a preliminary hearing. That's going to be court time. As far as the domestic situations, sometimes those have felonies with them, and there's going to be court time there. Am I wrong on that?
No, I mean, there's other factors that you throw in there, because some of it's drug-related, and which will go into the felony. Sometimes you got burglaries involved in it. You've got all kinds of moving parts.
Sure. I mean, but if you're working federal overtime, you sign in on, the deputy signs in as federal overtime. They're out working federal overtime, correct?
Right.
Any cases that he gets, obviously, is going to be while he's working federal overtime.
Right. And most of
I mean, you
those,
can
like
track
said, are-
those all the way through, if they do go to the court. I mean, you can track those through the court.
But like he was saying, though, you know, your seatbelt citations and stuff like that, it's not necessary for the officer to go on those, or DUIs, unless there is suppression or whatever, and that's when we go on those.
Is possibly what you're trying to say is that we only get reimbursed up to this point, and anything after that is on our, yes.
Right.
So there is a cost, and I mean, that's what we're finding, is that initially, the understanding was that FOT and that federal overtime was 100% reimbursed. But what we're finding is that it actually eats into your overtime, if they go to court.
Yeah.
That's very common from federal and state programs, that we end up eating part of the cost almost always.
Sure. And trying to keep up with that cost. do you know how much, can you separate that out, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
We'll try to. I ain't got it separated out now. We
Sure.
never had to do that, but yeah, we'll try to do that. We'll try to do everything we can.
I mean, when we're talking about going into the line items, that's probably one thing that
Yeah.
you and Emily can do.
Yeah.
Is the, trying to identify exactly the amount in each instance, I think is just the right thing to do. You got the spreadsheet in front of you. I mean, he has to have that number so he can submit it. I think this year at 2268, again, I forget how many years we've been over. You've been over your deputy hire, and this year you've been under. So I mean, we are making improvements, but
Are we proposing raising the deputy hire for 2017?
it's what's in there, yeah.
Okay, and that would raise that figure of $1,288,600 to what?
Depends on what number you all
With
settle
the
at.
number 4,000 put in there.
With the number 4,000, that puts you at 1,382,441.62.
Say again,
Um,
a million?
382,441.62. That's my number. I think,
So roughly, right at $100,000.
I'm
Is that
sorry.
correct? Roughly at $100,000, I think maybe that's a $94,000 increase in the deputy hire. And those figures are all reflected in that 4,000 hours of overtime. That is the difference in the pay in the 4,000 and what was computed of 2268.
22,
figure's
if you were to
$94,000.
not change it and carry forward 2,268, you'd be at 1,322,947.42.
Say
So it's
that
about
again?
$60,000 difference.
$60,000 difference. Well, the figure that you just read and from what the 2016 deputy hire, the difference is 94,000. My math is
Because,
correct.
well, you've got the things that I explained in the beginning, the clef difference. He's got some
Okay.
promotions and longevity increases, and then you've got the cost of living that I touched on.
Yeah, the clef is another one where, I mean, I don't think that's in question. I mean, that
Right.
number is.
I'm just trying to give you all a baseline as to what why
broke
we're
it all
moving
out
from
for you.
1,288 or 1,288,600 to anything else. That number will not work for 2017.
And for me, I don't see anything wrong with those numbers. It's, because the clef is set. The longevity, you got your budget in place. For me, I think we can get better at trying to identify a baseline for your overtime. And that's unless, y'all see something else, but
That's something we will work for.
yeah. I mean, I'd like to see us gradually work up to a number that we can honestly say, here's what your department needs to have, just to not put anybody or the service in a compromised position or anybody in a compromised position.
Certainly, I believe it's a really good idea to get, as much information as possible on where all the dollars are going, the overtime hours and all. But again, with as county attorney spoke, said, we have an increase in alcohol-related court proceedings. That certainly reflects on what our sheriff and his deputies are having to do. I mean, I'd move that we go with, about tie his hands and allow him the 4,000 overtime hours, and then we can adjust as needed from that point. The next, we can justify it or not justify it the next time this comes up.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? I think we've already had discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On a good note, there is a vehicle that's come in. It's ready to be picked up, and I think we've got the funds available to have it upfitted too. So you can get with Courtney. He reached out to us.
Hopefully they'll be okay with them letting it sit there for a while. Reason being is because not all the equipment has come in yet. Cage will be the last thing. That takes 8 weeks
Sure.
because it's custom built.
I think 1 or 2 will be in at the end of the month.
Yeah, I think, I talked to him this morning. I think the other 2 will be in by the end of the month,
Like I
hopefully.
said, I mean, because of the equipment not being here, it's not a rush thing that we,
I think he said he was going to go ahead and invoice us, but I don't think he's in any hurry getting it off the lot. So if you just want to coordinate with him, we'll take care of the invoice.
are you going to fill out the form or do you want me to do that or?
I can do it while we finish
Okay,
up.
all right.
And again, what is the 2017 maximum deputy hire?
If we go with the 4,000
Which
hour,
we just voted to
what you
do.
approved, that's $1,382,441.62. For rounding purposes, I would recommend you go to 132.5. 1,382.5, I'm sorry, that would be.
We'll try our dead level best to stay way under that number.
If you need it, you'll have it then. I mean, if necessary.
Like I said, I hope with us refining things that we can stay under that and get a better picture for next time.
Okay. And I know y'all are going to get.
I'll give you an example. Last week,
together.
I received a call at 1:30 in the morning after a matter had started, and by 4 o'clock the next afternoon, I had done the last of the paperwork, and they still had another arrest to make and search warrant to serve. And those officers worked straight through. I mean, and when we started at 1 o'clock, I thought that this would be days or weeks to get this thing put together. By daylight, they had all parties' names and identified and ready to go. There was
And actually,
young officers and veterans alike.
and actually, they did make that last arrest before he went in. They did good work, very good work.
We need to make a motion, the budget cumulative quarter report and annual settlement for calendar year 2017, now that you got your number that you need.
Yeah, that's what I give y'all last meeting.
Yep.
Make that motion, Judge.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll sign that.
Yeah.
I think you're going out of town. You're going out on a mission trip or something?
Yeah,
You're
I'm
gonna-
leaving Friday, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get that signed.
Yeah, that way, me and you can sign that, and she can get us a copy for it and take it back. Thank y'all.
We'll move on to the new business, county clerk budget, cumulative quarter report and annual settlement for calendar year 2017.
Tim not here?
His budget it changed, reflected cost of living estimates, and his numbers will change slightly because your assessments changed, just like the sheriff's did. Your property tax assessments changed, so his numbers will change. He also changed his office supplies to increase by $10,000 because the court let him know last year that we are wanting to cut back his office supply budget that we pay for. We're going to want to shift the majority of that back to him, so he did increase that number in his budget. Other than that, there were no other changes.
He's just normally here for that presentation.
I think he was expecting to do it on the 20th, and I don't know that I didn't tell him that we hadn't done it yet. I can text him and see if he'd care to run up.
Y'all have any questions on his?
No, he's returning $195,000.
That's what he's got budgeted.
Yes.
I'd move to accept, the
Second
clerk's
to
budget.
motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, under new business, the approved payment of the bills.
We've done the deputy hire, was that in that other motion, I guess?
Yeah, Tim, the clerk needs a motion for your budget and deputy hire approval.
Yeah, skip that
So
one.
if.
So we would need a motion for the county clerk
That
annual.
deputy hire remained the same?
The clerks,
Clerks, yes.
I believe so, yes.
That's my understanding.
We need a motion to
So
accept
moved,
the deputy
yeah.
hire. Yep, so moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So you have motions and votes on all four of those items?
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of got lost.
I didn't do it,
Those-
no.
Okay.
The clerks doesn't have the moving parts that the sheriff does.
Under new business, approved payment of the bills.
Pay the bills, Judge.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That's it on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.